Hi, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Attendance Bias. I am your host, Brian Weinstein. As I've mentioned on previous episodes of Attendance Bias, I was not that well informed about the Phish scene in general during the summer of 2022. Only a few thoughts about the bands playing crept their way into my consciousness at the time. However, before the Phish summer tour in 2022, Trey went on a solo acoustic tour that contained some very special highlights, specifically one special highlight from Grand Rapids, Michigan. A young fan named Jovi was called up onto the stage by Trey to sing Bug, which she did with confidence and aplomb. Within 48 hours, video of the duet spread far and wide, and before we knew it, Let Jovi Sing became a tagline in the Phish community. Soon after that, there were outlines of a fist-pumping Miss Unicorn appearing on t-shirts and tank tops. So if you haven't figured it out by now, today's guests are Mark and Jovi, the father and daughter pair who helped make that special highlight possible. Mark and Jovi tell their story about how the spontaneous and now legendary Bug came to be, but they also break down Jovi's first big-time Phish show, August 3rd, 2022, at Pine Knob Amphitheater. I've done duo interviews before, but Jovi is by far the youngest guest I've ever had on Attendance Bias. I was super nervous, and I hope that doesn't come through too much. But for now, let's join Mark and Jovi to talk about clapping during stash, whether to sit or stand at a Phish show, and much more, as we discuss August 3rd, 2022 at Pine Knob. Jovi and Mark, welcome to Attendance Bias. How are you?
Great, Brian. Thank you for having us.
My absolute pleasure. It was such a thrill to get an email from you, Mark. I didn't know your last name at the time, of course. And then when I started reading your email and you telling me that you're a big fan of the show, and then you mentioned your daughter, Jovi, of course, I instantly knew who you were speaking of. You know, the hit of last summer, pretty much. I was so thrilled to hear that not only are you a fan, but that you wanted to come on to the show to talk. And we have a lot to talk about today. The reason that most listeners are tuning in probably to hear Jovi's story, but we're also here to talk about Phish's show from August 3rd, 2022 at Pine Knob, when there was such a delay, such a big rain and torrential thunderstorms that instead of playing a two-set show, they played one long set. But we will get there. So before we get to anything, Mark, from your perspective, can you tell us a little bit about what happened from the inside out? What happened at the Frederick Meyer Garden in Grand Rapids when the Phish world learned of you and Jovi?
Really, they just learned of Jovi, but I'll tell you
That's
this story.
True.
Earlier in that spring, Phish had announced dates, and then Trey solo announced dates shortly after. We had bought tickets. We knew we were going to go to Pine Knob. We were going to go sit in the lawn and do like a family show. And then we knew we were going to do the Trey solo show. And so we got tickets for that. And we know that venue intimately. You can get right up close to stage. It's general admission. You bring your own chairs, you bring your own drinks. It's a very cool, relaxed atmosphere. And Jovi had just been getting into like Phish in a big way. And I had been watching her sing all these songs. She'd be, looking at the Alexa, singing along with the lyrics. And I was like, what if we could, would you be willing to sing with Trey? If we made a sign that said, can I sing a song with you? Would you be willing to do it?
Yes. And I said, yeah.
Jovi, do you like to get up in front of people and sing? Are you generally really that outgoing and like a show off, or are you a little bit shy in other circumstances?
Big.
You're a big show off. So what was it like?
Big.
So Jovi,
big personality.
when did it happen that did you have the sign up in front the whole show or just at the end? When did it happen?
I had it up on the whole show. Sometimes I got to go on my dad's shoulders so I could be taller.
Mm-hmm.
But he actually saw it when I was actually lower.
Oh, so Trey saw it when you were standing on your own feet instead of on your dad's shoulders.
Yeah. Right?
Okay.
Yeah. We were stage. If you're looking at the stage, we were on stage left. and the sun was setting behind us. So we never really looked our way. And for the first couple songs, she was just sort of holding it. And we didn't want the whole night to be about the sign. After, I can't remember what the third song was, but I was like, Jovi, just quick pop over to the center, show him the sign. Trey acknowledged it, and we came back. We put the sign down. We never touched it again till the end of the first set, or the end of the show, before the encore.
Actually, I picked up the sign again, and then I went back to the middle. I put it up, I put it down, and went. And since the sun actually set, then he could actually see us, and he saw the sign.
And so, Jovi, do you remember when someone came up to you or your dad or whoever and said that, yeah, Trey would like you to come along and sing? Do you remember when that happened?
Actually, Trey told me.
I don't remember that in the video, because all I saw was the video of you up there singing and Trey introducing you. So what happened before the video started?
Well, that's my brother's fault.
Oh, really? What did your brother do?
He has a YouTube channel.
Oh, got it. All right. So, Mark, I'll ask you what it was like then to have someone approach you. I mean, that must have been surreal, right?
Yeah, so what happened is after the final song of the set, he kind of glanced over at my wife and I, and he said, he sort of mouthed the words. He said, "Can she do it?" And my wife was like, "Yeah." And then Trey went off for encore, and then he came back, and then he asked Jovi, he brought her up kind of, and then said, "Do you want to do it?" And then what you see on the video is what happened from that point on, him bringing Jovi up and walking over, and then them having that moment together.
Coda actually did the video right after he told my mom and dad, and then did it.
And so is Coda your brother?
Coda is my brother.
Okay. So do you guys, Jovi, I'll ask you, do you guys go to a lot of concerts together as a family?
I've only been to one.
Oh, all right. And that's the one we're talking about today, I guess.
Yep, she's just starting to get into music.
You mean Phish?
Phish in general, but her first two concert experiences was Trey solo and then the Phish concert. So she has a pretty skewed view of what happens at concerts.
And Jovi, what music did you listen to before your dad started playing Phish for you?
Actually, when I was in preschool, I listened to Phish.
Oh, wow.
But usually only one song.
Was it Bug?
No, it was Fee.
Oh, I love Fee. That's one of my favorite. I sing it whenever I listen to it. It's at least another day or two. I'm singing it over and over in my head, over and over again.
Over and over.
So when that video, your brother, when Coda's video hit YouTube, I mean, I don't have to tell you what happened, but it spread really quickly. And everyone was a big fan of yours and of your version of Bug. It seemed like everyone in the audience was having a great time. Jovi, what did it look like to you? Were you looking at your feet? Were you looking at Trey? Were you looking into the audience? What do you remember from what it looked like?
I was looking at the audience, and then actually I forgot the words, and then Trey helped me. And
he was really nice about it, right?
Nobody even noticed.
Yeah, it sounded great. Mark, where were you? Were you and your wife to the side stage?
Yeah, so we got ushered by the fans to dead center stage. They were like, "You go right here." And so my wife and I were both taking video from center stage right in front of Trey and Jovi.
And it wasn't long after your video or Coda's video spread and got really popular that people were even selling shirts and tank tops. The one I remember is a pink one that has you with your fist high up in the air. What was it just a Bug? Do you know the one I'm talking about? Do you remember?
Is it Let Jovi Sing?
Let Jovi Sing. That's the one I'm thinking of. Yeah. So is that weird? Are you just happy about it? How does that make you feel that people want to wear a shirt with the outline of you on it?
I first thought it was like a building. Because it was so hard to make out. And then when my grandma actually got it, it actually looked like I was on it.
Yeah, and there's stars and stuff, right, around you?
Yeah, and I kind of feel appreciated.
Oh, well, good for you. You are appreciated.
Yeah, that was our friend, he's my friend now, but a fan who reached out to us. His name's Michael Swain from So Many Roads Design.
Yeah.
And he came up with the idea with somebody else. And then the 100% of the proceeds of that shirt went to Jovi's music department. And I got to shout out Michael. He was so cool throughout this whole process. Please check out his shop at So Many Roads. Cool hats, cool slaps, all that stuff.
Yeah, true.
And we'll put a link. Is it an Etsy shop or does he have his own website set up?
It's an Etsy shop.
Yeah. All right, so we'll put a link in the show notes when this episode airs.
Very cool.
So, Jovi, before we get to the show, the big Phish show that we're going to talk about, I want to ask you guys a couple questions about Phish in general.
Attendance bias lightning round.
So, Mark, what was your first Phish show, and what do you remember from it?
My first Phish show was November 8th, 1996, Champaign, Illinois. My dad and my best friend's dad dropped us off about an hour away from Peoria, which is our hometown.
Yeah.
And the show, I was hooked from get-go. It was, they opened with Runaway Jim. It was, when the lights dropped, my world had changed. It was really cool to see the lights, the lot scene, like all of that. Just, I was mesmerized by it and never looked back.
Yeah, I think he was 15 or 16.
I was 15 years old, yeah.
I was only 7 in my first Phish concert.
Well, that's something to really brag about. I once had a student.
Well, no, I was 8.
You were 8? All right, well, that's still something to brag about.
Trey solo concert.
I have a student, or had a student, who, when I asked, he was a big Phish fan and his family used to go to shows together, or they still do. And when he was in my class, I asked him, how old were you at your first show? And he said, I was in my mom's womb when I was at my first show. He wasn't even born yet. The first, so his mom took him when she was pregnant.
I think Jovi and all of her brothers have been to Phish shows in utero as well.
Oh, so you get to brag.
Yeah.
Mark, what was your most recent Phish show and what did you think of it?
I went to the last show of the 2022 summer before Dick's in Alpine Valley. And I was really excited because I thought that whole summer was great. And it was the last show. And it started off super hot. I got my first landlady, which
congratulations.
They've recently started to bring back more and more. And the show started off really hot. It was like just the classics, and then sort of went into their newer material and changed the tone of the show. And then they ended strong with First Tube and other,
They
just
also
big
did
rockers. Not at the show I was at.
But they did do it at Pine Knob.
Yes, they did do it at Pine.
And we're going to get there. I can't wait to ask you about it because when I listened to the recording, I know you got a special shout out. So I'm excited to ask you how you felt about that. But Jovi, before we get to the Bug Encore at Pine Knob, other than Bug, what Phish songs do you like the most?
And Piper.
Oh, I like Piper too.
Yeah, Piper, because my cousin is named Piper.
Do you have any other Phish songs you like?
Feed.
Mm-hmm.
Dog-Faced Boy.
Well, I like that. I like all your songs that you like. We have a lot in common.
Jaboo.
Oh,
Jaboo.
got a Jaboo.
Yeah.
Jovi, if you got this special occasion, if Trey said you could sing another song up here with us, but it can't be Bug, it has to be something different, what song would you sing?
Piper.
Probably going to sing about the red worm?
I like the red worm. The red worm is named after my cousin. Oh, yeah, and Susie Greenberg. That's a good one.
You know what? You're like me. When someone asks what my favorite is, I just keep naming songs as they come to me, and it's never going to end. We're just going to keep naming songs that are all our favorites. But talking about favorites, Jovi, do you have a favorite member of Phish?
No.
No, you like them all?
Well, Actually, sometimes I can feel like Paige is my favorite member. Sometimes I can feel like John Fisherman. Sometimes I can feel like Mike. Sometimes I can feel like Trey. So anytime I could feel like anyone.
That's a solid answer.
Well, most of the time, Trey.
Mark, for this show at Pine Knob that we're going to talk about today, as Jovi just mentioned earlier, she was acknowledged to be in the crowd for the encore. How did the Phish organization approach you to come to this concert at Pine Knob?
They didn't approach us. So what happened is I actually reached out to Scott Marks, who you just had on the podcast, and he had reached out to us early to do some set list finessing after Jovi's moment with Trey. And so we kind of just kicked off this friendship. And so I asked him, we were watching all the webcasts that summer, and I kept seeing the same people in the front rows. And so I reached out to him and I said, Scott, how do we get up there? We'd like to just thank Trey personally and give him a gift if we can. And he linked us up to a guy named Daniel who did all the legwork in getting us pit tickets. It started off, it was just going to be for either Jovi and I or Jovi's mom and I. And then we decided that it had to be an all or nothing thing. And Daniel did so much work to find these tickets, but he got them all for us. And we're super grateful for that. And so, yeah, that's basically how that happened.
Cool. That's great. Thanks to Daniel then. Jovi, at this point, is the Pine Knob show that we're talking about, is that the only Phish concert you've been to?
That's the only Phish concert I've been to.
Do you or your family have any plans for this spring or this summer to go see them any more?
I have plans.
Oh, you do. Mark, I guess I should ask if you do also.
My wife and I are going to go to Dick's, and then we have been talking about trying to sneak in an MSG show with the family on one of the nights. We're seeing if we can work out the logistics and things like that. So if we do that, they're not doing anything in the Midwest this year. So it's harder for us to just have one of the, Deer Creek or Alpine or Pine Knob to go to. So we really have to think hard about getting to Phish this year with the family.
Also, we might go on a vacation to New York or Oregon.
That's true.
Mark, what is your most controversial Phish opinion?
I love Ficus. I know people clown on that song, but I think it's great. I love the bass line. I love the colorful lyrics, and I love to hear it live.
Didn't Kai go to make a dance to the song?
No, that was Wombat.
Wombat. That's Wombat.
I love Wombat also. I love the dance when they played it live for the first time in Atlantic City.
Oh, yeah, that was so cool.
Jovi, when you were at the Phish show at Pine Knob, what was the weirdest or funniest thing that you saw there?
At Pine Knob.
I'm thinking.
Okay.
Oh, I got it.
All right, let's hear it.
People wearing ponchos, even though they were under like a roof. And also, we were going there with Dad's friend Walter, and we couldn't find him.
that tends to happen.
That was pretty funny.
Mark,
what is the strangest thing you've ever seen at a Phish show?
Yeah, so I was thinking about this question, and I have tons of stories because I did all of Summer Tour minus the opener in 99 and all of Summer Tour in 2000. And so I was talking with some friends. I'm like, give me some of the things that we've seen. I don't know if I can talk about some of them in front of Jovi. Maybe me and you could do another podcast sometime. But I was thinking about it, and like when you're on Phish tour, when you love Phish and you follow them, like weird becomes normal, right? And
right.
Normal becomes weird. But one of the coolest things that I remember seeing, were you at Camden in 2000 at the 4th of July show?
No, I was not.
After that show, outside of the venue, underneath the overpass, I'm not sure which highway it is, there was like this crazy impromptu rave. All Phish fans just packed into this little underpass and drum circles, and just people with music and everybody walking through there. Like the energy was just so cool. And I'll never forget passing through there after the show that year. It was so cool.
When was this show played?
So let's talk a little bit about the summer of 2022 and this show in particular, which went from a 2-set show to one long set at Pine Knob on August 3rd. So I didn't go to a lot of shows in the summer of 2022. Last summer, I was occupied. I got married, and so I was kind of otherwise involved, I'll say, although my wife is a big thanks. My wife is a big Phish fan, but cool. Believe it or not, there are some things that are bigger than Phish occasionally. And this was one of them. So I only remember I went to the Atlantic City shows, the 3 that were there, and I only got bits and pieces of what was going on tour. And the things that kind of bled out to my understanding were Trey's vocals. He was doing something funny with his voice, and that there were big jams coming out of unexpected places.
Mm-hmm.
So, Mark, what do you remember from the summer of 2022, and what were your expectations going into this show?
I was expecting big things. The whole summer was I felt like Phish was firing on all cylinders. Some of my favorite jams came out of this summer, The Simple from Deer Creek. And so heading into Pine Knob, the Blossom show, I think, was right before it. And it was the show of the tour. And so we were expecting big things.
Jovi, when you got to the parking lot and you got into the venue, the shed of Pine Knob, right? You got to your seat. Was it really crazy to be up front?
It was really, really crazy. And I actually didn't know what to expect because it was my first Phish show ever. Well, out of my mom's belly, but it was my first Phish show ever. So I was expecting something probably big.
And she had seen some webcast live performances, but never been to the show. So yes.
And I was probably expecting something very big like the New Year's Eve, but it's not. But it wasn't the New Year's Eve concert, so I was probably not expecting like exactly like the New Year's Eve, like the hot dog at New Year's Eve.
Joey, did you hang out in the parking lot at all with your family? Did you walk around?
Yeah.
Do you remember anything from that part of the evening?
What did we do? We went and visited people and handed out stickers.
We went and handed out stickers.
Do you remember what kinds of stickers? What did they say on them?
Like Jovi Sing.
Did people recognize you? Did they know who you were?
A lot of them. Some of them didn't.
Was everyone really nice to you then? Everyone. I would think so. Do you remember anyone saying anything to you or what their reactions were when they found out you were Jovi for the person who sang Bug? Did people act like that, or how did they act?
Excited.
Yeah, I bet.
Exclamation point.
Exclamation.
Exclamation point.
It was really cool. We got there kind of early, and it was actually super sunny. This was before the storms had come. So we walked around and handed out stickers, and we're just trading stickers. And Jovi was taking pictures with people and, trading merchandise and stuff. It was a really cool experience.
That's really fun. Jovi, what was it like when the rain started to come down?
We didn't have any ponchos because we left our ponchos in the car. And so we had to buy them. Mm-hmm. And I actually didn't really want a poncho, but I needed one.
Definitely. And now you have an extra. Now you have 2.
Yeah.
You had one in the car, now you have a new one.
Actually, I have 5 extra.
All right. Well, you're well prepared.
She's well prepared for any torrential rainstorms again.
What was the timing like, if you remember, for when the show was supposed to start, when you got announcements, and then when the rain came down? What was that like?
We did early entry, obviously, and pulled pretty high numbers And so we had to go around, I think it was like 5:30, and we were meeting up with all the early entry people. And we got inside the venue, just right inside when most of the early entry people got right inside when they said everybody has to go shelter in place. And it was super funny because nobody in that early entry line was willing to move. Like everybody like had their spots. We were just getting rained on, and I can't remember the head of security's name for Phish. I think it's Rick, maybe. Finally was like, okay, these people aren't budging. So he brought us all down to pavilion inside the venue, inside the, close to the stage, and everybody sat down and we just waited it out with, it was like 50, 60 other fans who got in on the early entry. And we didn't know we were going to be there for the next hour and 40 minutes, but we made a lot of friends during that time and got to hear some fun stories and tell some fun stories.
So what time did the music actually begin? Do you remember?
I think it came on at 9.
Yeah, it's a long day, right, Jovi?
Yes, it was.
Actually, that was after my bedtime.
So Phish opened with 2 newer songs. To your point earlier, Mark, about playing newer material, they opened with I Never Needed You Like This Before. Personally, I'm still kind of undecided on this song. I always kind of groan when they start it, but I always end up loving it by the time it's over.
I feel the exact same way. And I really liked when Trey and the Roots did this during COVID.
Yes.
There was something very comforting about the lyrics and just seeing everybody on stage. And I remember that being a memorable moment for me listening to that song for the first time.
It was the first, was it Jimmy Fallon? I think
it was Fallon.
Yeah, I think it was the first late night performance by a band since COVID really got into the world we discovered. I remember that, and now I got to remember it when I hear it live. So that'll be my
take
anchor.
You back to that moment of sort of like, where are we at in the world, and then a nice comfortable new Trey song comes out and makes you feel all warm and fuzzy.
Yeah, and the next one did too. They played Everything's Right. It was a pretty standard version, but it began very uplifting. Jovi, what do you think about Everything's Right?
Everything's right. So stay on tight.
Just hold tight.
Everything's right. So just hold tight. Everything's right. So just hold tight. I like that song.
I do too.
This world, this wonderful world.
It's fun to sing along with it. And that's kind of what I'm hoping for with I Never Needed You Like This Before, because Everything's Right started off for me. I would always kind of go, all right, I don't love this song. But now I'm in. Now I love it. And it's a really good version.
I agree. Like whenever it's sort of in the same thing as like with I Never Needed You Like This Before. You're like, oh, okay, here we go again. But it always makes you feel good by the end of it. And this had a really nice jam. I was really noticing like the interplay between the band. It was the second song in, and being so close up there, you could notice like physical subtleties that they, physical movements that they kind of they're talking to each other with their instruments, and then just these slight sort of physical ticks too. And I really felt like they just got locked in right away on this one.
they follow up with Kill Devil Falls, and my first thought was, this is a very 3.0 set. A lot of newer, to me, Kill Devil Falls is still new. It's been
me
around,
too.
it's been around forever, but it doesn't matter. To me, it's still new. It's a little slower than usual, but I noticed they played a little Jeff Beck tease, Freeway Jam. It was very
cool.
Yeah, it was toward the end. It was at 9 minutes.
Yeah, they did. I remember that. I was wondering what that was from. I could recognize the melody, but I didn't remember if it was Allman Brothers or. That's cool. Yeah, and I also like with Kill Devil Falls, I think it's new too. Like anything really post Round Room feels new to me.
Yeah, I'm the same kind of fan. And after that, they needed kind of a calm down, like everyone needs to kind of like chill out a little bit, and they played Camel Walk. Jovi, by the number of songs that you listed earlier, I have to guess, and this is only a guess, that Camel Walk is one of your favorites. Am I right or am I wrong?
She's. I don't think she's ever outside of the show seen that song. What do you think? What's your thought on Camel Walk? Do you remember it?
What is it?
Camel Walk.
Dun, dun, dun.
Also, I've never heard Kill Devil Falls. I only heard it in the New Year's Eve concert. And because it was actually very new to me, and it still feels new.
Yeah.
So it's been around for like 40 years.
After that, they played Stash, which is a really weird song. Jovi, did you know this one?
Yeah. Stash is one of the best songs, even though usually Phish songs have words and they're not like just like one main part about like there's like usually a lot of main parts that you can like sing and remember really well.
I agree. Stash has a lot of different parts to it. And this one from Pine Knob in 2022, there were a lot of parts to this one. This was a really good jam. And it takes a lot to impress me from Stash. I've kind of settled on Stash. What I mean is sometimes when it starts, I'm ready to go get something to eat or have to go to the bathroom if I need to. But when I was listening to this one, there are parts like at around 10 minutes, there's a big peak. And then 12 and a half minutes, I would have no idea that this started with Stash. They're completely in another world. And Fishman is right on the hi-hat. They immediately, right at the end, pivot back to the song.
I felt like this whole show all of the jams were sort of thematic, and that they all sort of found their way to the same major groove. And even songs like Stash that we know have come to love, like the dark side of Phish, they found their way into like this major, beautiful sort of light tone jam. And I like it. I liked that. Going back and listening to this, I didn't realize how good of a jam it was. I don't remember it at the show, but and also Jovi was well prepared for the claps. She
It sounds like it.
Actually, that was the first time I ever heard Stash.
That's so exciting.
Or maybe the second or third, or maybe like the 1 millionth, but I didn't remember it until I actually heard the clapping part. I missed the first one, but I got the second one and third.
And I'm guessing if you hear it again, you'll never miss it again.
Well, maybe I'll miss the first part.
Well, no one's going to judge you. You will be right on point. And next up after Stash was Bouncing Around the Room, which is one of my favorite Phish songs.
Yeah. Actually, when I first heard it, I didn't even know what Phish was.
Oh, is that right? How young were you? What age were you when you heard Bouncing Around the Room for the first time?
Whatever age Coda was, I was 2 minus.
I think you were about 3 probably when you first heard that song.
About 3.
And then they followed up with a lot darker. Speaking about, major keys and minor keys, My Friend. It seemed like they had a little bit of trouble getting off the ground, but it was a usual great version. It only good things to say about this. And then David Bowie, where, talk about songs I'm not usually thrilled with in 3.0. There was a description. You brought up Scott Marks, in the set list, kind of expert for us on the Phish.net jam charts. Here's how it's described. Quote, interested in modern Bowies? Clarkstown, Michigan is a safe bet. Part of a weather-blown, Jovi-colored, and quite strange show. There's much to appreciate here. As Trey, listen for Page on his piano, takes the band through a few wonderful passages of electric, lightning-infused improv. Mark, do you remember the crowd's response? If not to this David Bowie, just to the idea of being in a long set instead of 2 shorter sets?
The crowd was pretty reactive when they hit the hi-hat there to start it off. And I thought this jam was really good. And like you said, 3.0 Bowies have been kind of hit or miss. But the one thing I did notice about this one is right at the end of like the peak jam, they usually do this chord change where they sit on it for a little bit, and then Trey does a diddly, 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 diddly. But they went right from the jam, and instead of sitting on those chords, they just went right into closing the song up. And I like when they kind of extend that part too. I think that's sort of a 3.0 thing now, where they don't do that third section of the jam.
Yeah. And
I really missed that. So I was really hoping that maybe they were going to bring that back this night, but it was still a really good Bowie.
I agree. I wrote in my notes, I quoted Quentin Tarantino in Django Unchained. I wrote, at 8 minutes, you had my curiosity. Now you have my attention.
Yeah.
It really made me pay attention. But
Yeah.
they're firing on all cylinders because they played Carini
Yeah.
next, and it really hit the spot. And it brought me
Yeah.
back. You mentioned earlier that they kept going back to this theme in this jam. There
Mhm.
was a part pretty early on where the rhythm section, it kind of brought me back to Everything's Right.
Yeah, totally. I agree with that. The thematic jam night, they all found, even these darker songs found their way back into like these lighter jams.
Versions.
Yep.
Versions.
Yep.
Yep. Jovi, do you remember any part of this song, Carini? Did you know it before you went to the concert?
No.
No.
And I still don't even know the name.
So, well, that's what I was going to ask next, Jovi. Do you ever listen back to this concert?
Have you? I don't know. I don't think we have we?
No.
Oh, all right. Well, that's something to do. I listened back to my first concert so many times. It's one of my most listened to pieces of music ever. So if you really have really nice and fond memories of this concert, that's just a recommendation, something that I think you might like.
Mm-hmm. We'll check it out again, of course.
And I remember during the summer of 2022 when I got home from my honeymoon and I was kind of retroactively looking back as to what people were saying about it. A lot of people were criticizing too many repeats, the usual Phish criticisms that don't bear out in real life. But I wrote down in this Carini, for anyone who says that summer 2022 wasn't so great, I challenge them with this jam. This is the highlight of the show for me so far, like unrelenting musical positivity. And then at the end, they even tease Lowrider by War. This is why this is why I keep coming back to see this band.
Yeah. Yeah, I love how that lowrider just kind of crept up from the depths of from the jam, and I was hoping that they were gonna play the whole song, but alas, they kept it at a tease.
First one since Utah in 2003. It was the first tease. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was at that show, that Utah show where
cool.
they played it last, and that was a killer show in and of itself. So.
And then things, they've been teasing positive jams in dark songs, but now it's just all straight dance party with No Men in No Man's Land, which was a pretty smooth segue.
Yeah.
And a big wall of sound. So, Jovi, for this show, were you guys up front and center? Were you in by the rail? Do you remember?
Yes. Actually, before the concert, I was jumping up on it.
You jumping up on the rail?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And when you were there, was there a lot of space for you to dance and move around?
I had a stool.
Really?
Yeah.
Yep,
Man.
Daniel brought us a stool. The same guy who got us tickets brought a stool for Jovi to be able to see above the rail.
Because
Man,
I'm
I was
very
going to say, if you come to Madison Square Garden, I'm going to hang out with you guys. I could use a stool sometimes during Phish concerts.
Yeah, it was a nice asset to have. All the kids used it at one point or another to get better views.
Oh, so Jovi, were there other people your age around?
Your brothers?
my brothers.
Oh, okay. So when you said other kids, you meant your family.
Yes, the whole family was there up on the rail. So
That's so nice.
Well, actually, one of my brothers is 4 years older than me.
so he's a little bit taller, so he could probably see without the stool.
Yeah. But Coda, sometimes we switched, like from stool to ground, stool to ground.
That's how I watch shows also. Sometimes I'm standing and sometimes I'm sitting. Sometimes I'm standing. I don't get a stool though. I just have to sit in my seat. But I watch shows the same way as you do. After No Men in No Man's Land, they played Twist, which was very laid back, I wrote down. It was very chill.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like Twist.
I do too. And it should be noted, by the way, for anyone listening along in your car or at home, we're almost at the very end of this show already.
Oh, wow.
What?
Yeah. After
Just
Twist, there's only one more song. Yeah. Well, during the set, there's still the encore after that also.
Oh yeah, yes.
Right. Can't forget. Right. That's the most important part in this conversation.
That's because that's when they play Bug.
Yes, exactly right. But before we get to Bug, before we get to the encore, they open with a 3.0 or maybe 4.0 song, depending on your perspective. They closed the set, the main set, with Drift While You're Sleeping.
Mhm.
And I wrote that they started the show with lots of new school songs. The big middle was mostly older songs, but now they're coming full circle.
Yeah, I really like this song. I think it's a great way to close. It's not something that I'm like going after, but when I hear it, I'm always glad to have heard it and just the message that the song brings. And it was a great way to close the night. I never needed you like this before to open, and love all things love. Drift while you're sleeping to close it.
Yeah, it's hard not to like.
Yeah, and then it was fun because after they rocked out that ending, and Trey kind of Jedi'd out a little bit. He came over to Jovi, and what'd you get to do? Remember, you handed him the picture and the letters.
Oh yeah, I handed him the picture and the letters, and then he handed me another guitar pluck.
Oh, fun!
I give those to my brother.
Wow, you're a good sister.
I don't play guitar.
Right, your brothers do?
Well, one of them.
One of them does. What was the pictures and the letters? What was the picture of? Do you remember?
The picture.
The picture that you gave Trey.
The picture was of me and Trey there on the scene. And the letter was...
I think we all wrote thank you letters to Trey and the band and stuff like that. So
Oh, that's very sweet.
figure if we had this opportunity to convey our love of Phish, it was worth it to thank all of them and thank Trey for the opportunity and things like that.
So they go off stage for a couple of minutes, maybe less, and they come back on. And I had a huge smile on my face when I was listening to the show because Bug, before they played it, they dedicated, or Trey did at least, to Jovi. And he said, who is standing right there. Did he point at you?
Yes.
He did, yeah. And I imagine lots of people were fist pumping during this one. Do you remember that at all?
Yeah, they're going, Bug, Bug, Bug.
So for anyone listening, you can't see the video, but Jovi is giving her best Bug fist pump that I can see. And by the way, if you watch the video, there are YouTube videos of this encore. Trey himself is throwing his fist in the air at almost every time he says that word.
They're going like, bang!
Yep.
It was really cool. He, obviously you can hear him dedicate the song to her, and then they're playing it. And at one moment in the second verse, he just shifts his whole body, faces Jovi, and he says, "Nothing I see can be taken from me." And he kind of points at her, and then he throws up his fist on that bug. It was so beautiful. Just a great way to encapsulate the whole moment in summer. It was perfect.
That was the best summer I ever had.
Hi, everybody. Brian here to welcome you to the set break of today's episode of Attendance Bias. First, thank you for listening. And second, just a quick reminder to tell you that even though Attendance Bias comes to you for free, it does take a lot of work and it does take quite a bit of money to keep the lights on here at production. So I just wanted to ask a small favor if you could support the podcast in any number of the following ways. If you could leave a review or a rating of it on whichever podcast app you use. If you could spread the word, telling a friend or someone you think may be interested in it about it. Or probably the most concrete way is to go to www.buymeacoffee.com/attendancebias and donate however much you can financially to help with the continuing costs of Attendance Bias. So thank you again so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy the second half of today's episode. Well, Mark and Jovi, thank you so much for taking your time to reach out to me and to work together that we can have a time that we're both available to talk about this, to talk about Jovi's vocals for an acoustic show, and then your experience going to a full Phish show. That's very exciting, and I hope that you guys get to go see at least one show this summer. So thank you for joining me.
Brian, thank you so much for having us. I really appreciate all that you do for the community, and we're really grateful that you let us be on your podcast to chat for a bit.
I hope we also see one this spring break.
Fingers crossed. I'm crossing my fingers for you, okay?
That's also crossing his fingers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, I bet.
Thank you so much, Brian.
And that's it for today's interview with Mark and Jovi. Thanks to them for appearing on the show. And although today's episode is a little bit shorter than usual, there is still room for also a short attendance bias fact check.
Attendance bias fact check.
For the record, the venue where Jovi sang Bug with Trey was the Frederick Meyer Garden and Sculpture Park in Grand Rapids, Michigan. It has a capacity of 1,900 people, although according to the website, there is, quote, more room for guests. Mark's controversial Phish opinion is that he loves ficus. For the record, the song that's recorded for The Story of the Ghost has only been played 5 times at the time of this recording. They were all played in 1998, and it was last played on November 7th, 1998 at the UIC Pavilion. The debut of I Never Needed You Like This Before was played by Trey with The Roots as his backing band, airing on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon on August 11th, 2020. That was roughly about 5 months after the beginning of quarantine or lockdown in New York City. Personally speaking, it seems like a million years ago, and yet it still gives me the heebie-jeebies when I see that 2020 date on the recording. The last tease of Lowrider by War, which Mark was present for, was at the USANA Amphitheater, better known as the E-Center, in West Valley, Utah, on July 15th, 2003. The classic song was teased, or fully played, depending on your point of view, during the Set 2 opener of Mr. Completely, which itself was a Phish debut at the time. And finally, a reminder for you, if you're interested in picking up a Let Jovi Sing shirt or tank top with Jovi's outline on it, go to Etsy and search for So Many Roads Designs. And that's it for today's episode. Huge thanks to Mark and Jovi for joining me today. Thanks to Phish.net for its help with the fact check, and Phish.in for the recording used in today's episode. If you enjoy Attendance Bias, please support the show by leaving a rating or a review of it on your favorite podcast app. And you can always go to www.buymeacoffee.com/attendancebias and donate anything you can spare. So thank you again so much for listening, and I'll see you next time on Attendance Bias.